I'm Dede Wilson of FODMAP Everyday, and I'm thrilled to be doing this webinar on visceral hypersensitivity with one of our success team, Monash trained dietitians, Lee Morato. And thank you to everyone who registered, and for those who were able to join us live, thank you as well. We work very hard at bringing you all the evidence-based resources you need addressing the low FODMAP diet, IBS, and other digestive issues free to you at FODMAP Everyday. And your participation in our community is what keeps us going. So when you see us offering webinars like this, even if you can't join us, please register and we'll bring you on into the community. So we are here to talk about visceral hypersensitivity. This is because we did a poll in a couple of our Facebook groups and we asked you what you wanted, and this was near the top. And I was thrilled to see that because it's something that I've dealt with myself, although I didn't know it. And I'm betting that a lot of you are dealing with or have dealt with gut pain. I think that before you start learning a lot about FODMAPs and IBS and digestive issues, we just know that our tummy hurts or our stomach hurts, or we're just dealing with an immense amount of pain involving our gut. And it seems like it's difficult to get an explanation for what that is and why it is. And I know that by the end of this hour, you're going to have some light bulb moments, just like I did when I learned about visceral hypersensitivity. We're going to be doing a poll. Robin's going to put up a poll. We just want to get a sense of who's in the room with us in terms of your IBS diagnosis. Oh, you're already filling it out. That's great. We want to know how you were diagnosed. We want to know if you're working with a dietitian. And we will have time at the end for questions and answers. So I'm going to turn it over to Lee. Lee Morato is one of our dietitians on our team at FODMAP Everyday, as I mentioned, and she has written many of our very popular evidence-based articles. I invite all of you later on today to go to FODMAPeveryday.com and put Lee's name in the search bar, and you are going to find loads of really interesting reading that's going to help all of us get better and maximize our health. So Lee, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dede. And FODMAP Everyday is an amazing resource, and I send clients there pretty much every day. So it's so great to have you guys, and just the wealth and the amount of resources and articles that you have on so many different relevant topics, and just all the work that goes in behind them is, I think, a lifesaver for so many people. So, and I know I have lots of clients tell me too that they love your site. So it's been awesome working together. And I'm excited to chat about visceral hypersensitivity today. I think it's thrown around a lot in the IBS space, but I think actually a lot of people with IBS don't even fully know or understand what it is or ever had it explained to them. So I think it's really important that we're going to chat through it today, and hopefully everyone who's here today gets a much deeper understanding of what it is as well.
Well, take it away.
Okay, awesome. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Let me know if you can see this. It's all good. You can hear me?
Yes.
You can see me? Okay, cool. So yeah, let's get into it. So what is visceral hypersensitivity? And I'd love to know, even if people want to put in the chat, if you have heard of this term before and you feel like you have a good understanding of it, or you really don't know much about what it is and what it means. I'd be curious to know just where people stand. So visceral hypersensitivity is actually considered now a true medical diagnosis. And what it refers to is a increase of or a higher sensitivity of pain in your visceral organs. So your visceral organs are like the deep organs within your sort of pelvic and abdominal cavity, including your digestive organs. So if we sort of break down the term, visceral means like very deep. If we say we have like a visceral sensation to something, it's like it rocks us within our core, so very deep within. And then hyper, the prefix meaning more, and then sensitivity to pain. So in the context of IBS, if we say that someone has visceral hypersensitivity as one of their IBS symptoms. It essentially means a increased sensitivity to pain and changes within the digestive organs, primarily the large bowel. It can actually be broken down into two different types of visceral hypersensitivity. So the first type is known as hyperalgesia. So maybe a big word, people haven't heard of it, but essentially what it means is that you have a increased sort of response to something or a stimuli that would normally cause pain. So the example would be, let's say someone like pinched you on your shoulder, and if you had visceral hypersensitivity, you'd feel like it was like a gunshot, like it would be much more enhanced than sort of a normal sensation to that. The other type is allodynia, which is another type of visceral hypersensitivity. And that essentially means you sort of respond to normal stimuli that wouldn't normally cause pain, but you get a sensation of pain from it. So for some people, even in other chronic conditions, visceral hypersensitivity is very common. So even in like fibromyalgia, a lot of people get just pain. Even if someone lightly brushes them on their shoulder, it could feel like a really, really hard punch to the arm. So getting sort of like a pain response to something that normally wouldn't cause pain. So the two main types of visceral hypersensitivity. So it helps to kind of break down a little bit in terms of thinking about the nervous system. So when we think about visceral hypersensitivity in the context of pain, like pain is essentially something that we feel within our head. Without a nervous system, we wouldn't feel pain. So the idea with the nervous system is that it's that communication between our brain and our body. It's made up of our brain, our spinal cord, and then all the nerves that run through our body. Split into two different parts. So the central nervous system, which is our brain and our spinal cord, and then we have our peripheral nervous system, or anything on the periphery, the onset. That's broken into our autonomic nervous system, which communicates with like our internal organs and glands, and then our somatic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system is important in the context of digestion and IBS, because that's broken down into our sort of sympathetic division, which we think of like our fight or flight response, and then a parasympathetic. So anything we do at rest, so even digestive processes and all that. And that's sort of where the enteric nervous system, which is the nervous system within our gut, is located. So our gut actually has its own nervous system, and it's constantly communicating signals with the brain. Does that sort of make sense there, Dede? Any questions going off of that, or? Oh,
whoops, I was muted. Yes, we will address questions towards the end, but I think one comment that I'm just going to make, that I think one of my light bulb moments personally, and I think this will resonate for people, is as you've just shown all of us, even though everyone here is focused on their digestion and their gut, we're talking about this. I mean, our body is one thing, right? And so there's this general hypersensitivity that can happen. And I think that that was a light bulb moment for me. For instance, when I go to the dentist, for decades, my dentists have commented that I need more Novocaine than the average person. I feel things more intensely, right? And so the idea that it is the nervous system, like we're not just talking about a tummy ache. I mean, for me, really helped me understand that my system in general is on this hyper alert, is hyper alert.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think even just thinking about how the low FODMAP diet works and why it works, I think kind of helps us to understand visceral hypersensitivity too, because the idea of the low FODMAP diet is that we reduce FODMAPs, which are indigestible carbs or sugars. They don't get properly absorbed in the gut. So they move through the small intestine where they attract water, and then they move into the large bowel. And in the large bowel, we have bacteria break them down and ferment them. In the process of sort of that fermentation of FODMAPs, we get gas production, and then we also get sort of a absorption of water, and that causes like that stretching of the large intestine. So we kind of get the stretching of the intestinal walls. And for someone who doesn't have IBS, that may just feel like a little bit of normal bloating, a little bit of normal gas. But for someone with IBS, if they have that visceral hypersensitivity, the nerves in the gut are like, whoa, there's like a lot of movement going on here. We feel the stretching, and it sends a message to the brain that there's pain, or something painful is going on in our gut. So the idea of how the low FODMAP diet works is it sort of helps to control that symptom, those oversensitive nerves, by reducing the distension and the stretching that we get from eating food by reducing FODMAPs.
The
Yeah,
thing
that's
and
kind
the
of it.
thing that I think about at this point is that
Mhm.
for all of you, if you're at the point where you're challenging and reintroducing foods, people are always asking, well, what is a fail? What is a typical negative response or positive response when I'm trying a food?
Mhm.
And this is a perfect example of why you can't crowdsource an answer, because the way person A reacts and has a little bloating, it might not be a big deal. They might just get a little bloating with no pain at all. And person B could eat the exact same thing, have the same sort of physical visual amount of bloating, but be in excruciating pain. And it's because our nervous systems are not the same. So this is just one of the many ways it points to this being very individual when you work through the diet, and why it's so important to work with a dietitian who will understand your body, your system, and help you through it.
Absolutely. That's a good point there too. So just another question to get people chatting. Just always nice to hear from everyone. So you can think about this as I go on, but have you personally been diagnosed with, or do you think that you experience visceral hypersensitivity as part of your IBS or even other GI condition that you deal with? I think studies show that roughly anywhere between 30 to 90% of people with IBS have visceral hypersensitivity. We don't think everyone has it. Like, I've definitely had clients with IBS that pain and discomfort isn't really one of their main symptoms. They get sort of the mixed bowel habits and sometimes just more bloating without pain. So it's not with everyone, but it is quite common. So something to think about just in your own
What was the percentage
situation.
again?
Yeah, between a huge percentage. So between 30 to 90%, I've seen.
Okay.
So a big range. I did see another source say maybe roughly 40, but higher rates in those with IBS-M, so mixed type IBS, and then IBS-D.
Mhm.
Versus constipation, we don't tend to see as much visceral
Most
hypersensitivity.
people are saying that even if it was mentioned, it was not addressed. It wasn't explained.
Mm-hmm.
So they heard the words, but
But they thought, yeah, I don't know what this is, but there's so many things. I know with a meeting with your gastroenterologist, sometimes you only get like 10 minutes and it's hard to go through all the things. So let's get into what can actually cause visceral hypersensitivity. So to this point, we don't have like a magic pill and one thing that will just magically cure it. And there's a lot of different theories or ways that we think it can develop. So one of them is definitely the gut microbiome. I know in my practice, I love talking about the gut microbiome. We know now from so much science that it's actually at the heart of so many different chronic diseases and conditions. When sort of the gut microbiome goes off track or turns into what we know as dysbiosis, or some imbalance in the profile of the gut microbiome, maybe too much of the bad bacteria, not enough of the good. And the idea here is that if you potentially have sort of lower levels of good bacteria and higher levels of the pathogenic ones, and maybe your good gut bacteria aren't getting the right amount of fuel, even fiber types, plant diversity, what can happen is that there starts to be like a degradation of the mucus layer, which is like a protective layer within our intestinal tract. And then we may get sort of like a weakening of the junctions between the cells of our intestinal wall. And what this can lead to is potentially even like bacteria or food components sort of making their way through the intestinal wall. And also we know that if there's maybe an increase in like pathogenic bacteria, there may be an increase in mast cells. And that mast cells are sort of like they are our immune system's sort of alarm system. They get produced in higher amounts when they're sort of response to like a parasite or an invader. And what they can release is histamine and sort of cause a overactivation of the immune system. So all that to say, some imbalance in the microbiome within your intestinal tract that can cause sort of a increased immune system response, and it can also cause sort of some disconnect that can lead to visceral hypersensitivity and some disconnect with that, like the pain that you experience. So that's a common theory there too. Genetics as well. We know that some people are just maybe more predisposed to developing visceral hypersensitivity. As we know with genetics, it's not like a life sentence. Like not everyone develops something that they're genetically disposed to, but you may be at higher risk if you have some of the other risk factors. And then another one I really like to highlight is actually early life or childhood trauma and adverse childhood experiences. So that could be anywhere from physical or emotional trauma to even having, like an infection or going through some sort of traumatic event. We know that like when you're a child, you're still growing in your brain and your nervous system, like the circuitry is still being like wired and developing. And that's, if you do experience some form of that trauma, that can actually cause an increased sort of a hypervigilance of pain receptors that can develop as visceral hypersensitivity as you go through life. So that one I found was an interesting one. And there wasn't even like a lot of, so we like to have studies on humans, but sometimes we look at things in animal models. So there was a study, I think it was 2021, that looked at maternal separation of baby mice from their separation from their mothers. Kind of sad, but they did find that those the mice that were separated from their mothers at a young age actually developed visceral hypersensitivity or had higher levels of it, just due to sort of circulating levels of cortisol and all that. So sort of linking that to the connection in IBS too. And then psychological disorders, as we know with IBS, there's often common overlap of anxiety, depression, and even like somatic disorders, which then can contribute to potentially visceral hypersensitivity as well. Any follow-up questions to that or thoughts, Dede?
Just that, when you say gut microbiome, I mean, just really
Mhm.
briefly, that speaks to why it's so important that everybody who's following the low FODMAP diet progresses beyond the elimination phase. The goal of the diet is to eat as broadly as possible without triggering your symptoms. You're not going to get there unless you move through all three phases. If you get stuck in that elimination phase, it's too restrictive and you're going to have a nutritional deficit. So just a plug for moving through the diet.
Yeah, absolutely. And even while you're following low FODMAP, like we want to make sure your diet is as diverse as possible. Because we don't know exactly how to quantify like a healthy microbiome, but the idea is that a really wide diversity of different types of species is linked with a really healthy, robust microbiome that's more resilient to disease and just has a sort of a normal connection with our brain and our gut brain connection. And the way that we've seen that people can foster their microbiome and see from like populations like thousands of years ago is a very diverse source of different like plant compounds in the diet. So as much as you can when you're following low FODMAP, trying to get lots of different fiber types, lots of different types of plants, and make sure your diet is diverse as possible. And then proceeding to the challenge phase and the personalization so that you can add even more variety and really help build up the health of your microbiome as well long term. I like this chart. It just sort of explains the idea of leaky gut syndrome. Sort of medical term for this now is intestinal hyperpermeability, so sort of a degradation in the lining of the intestinal layer. And the idea is that if for whatever reason, dysbiosis or maybe lack of fuel for your good bacteria, we lose sort of that protective mucus layer, and there becomes sort of an opening between the cells of cell walls of our gut cells, and then things like even bacteria or food particles and components can make their way into the bloodstream, and that can also contribute there to inflammation and sort of that enhanced immune response. And the thought with this too is that it can also contribute to development of or worsening of visceral hypersensitivity too. So again, just another question to get people thinking. Personally, if maybe you had heard of visceral hypersensitivity before, have you ever sort of implemented any strategies to help with that symptom of your IBS specifically? Feel free, you can share in the chat, and maybe it will overlap with some of the ones I will go over too. So we'll get into how can I improve visceral hypersensitivity. So I like to think of this as sort of three main areas. The first one is sort of getting to really like the root of the visceral hypersensitivity and sort of the, I don't know if I love the term like root cause, but the sort of underlying cause or the driver of it. So how can we improve like our pain tolerance and our response in the gut? So here's where that gut brain and the nervous system support really plays a role in IBS. Like we always hear about like IBS is a gut brain disorder. You've probably seen those ads for Nerva, that it's all to do with that connection between your gut and your brain, well, there's truth to that. So definitely anything that can help sort of calm that connection between your gut and your brain, and even support the vagus nerve, which is the sort of the pair of nerves that link your gut and your brain, can be really helpful. So things that help to maybe calm the body down. I really like EFT tapping or emotional freedom technique. It's like a type of guided meditation. Meditation we know is really helpful with IBS and helping with visceral hypersensitivity symptoms. Breath work, diaphragmatic breathing, square breathing, yoga, those can be super helpful. Here's where that gut-directed hypnotherapy. So we do have a lot of good research to support that that can help with visceral hypersensitivity symptoms. And the idea there is it's sort of helping to maybe retrain some of those responses to pain. I think a lot of times with like in IBS, like we tend to be quite hypervigilant to like our pain symptoms, and we're always, I think we get to the point where we're always just kind of feeling for like any little thing and sort of getting like a response to it right away. So the idea with Nerva is that it just can kind of help to like relax and sort of reduce those like those pain signals and help sort of improve the sensitivity of the gut nerves. Abdominal massage, even some support for that. So that's where you get like actual someone who's trained in it to do a massage on your abdomen, which some people find really helpful. For some people with visceral hypersensitivity, it may be too much at first. So maybe the level that works for you, but it can be helpful. Cognitive behavioral therapy, and then also psychological mindset too. So I think, like I said, a lot of times with IBS, we become sort of hypervigilant to our symptoms and what's going on. And I always say too, like if you feel like IBS entirely like consumes your life and you're always thinking about it, it can be kind of helpful maybe to think about how we can sort of get support for that and maybe break out of it, even if you're having some pain. Or there are ways that you can, you know, have some social time or maybe engage in a hobby you like and sort of bring yourself out of that mindset, so your brain is not always kind of constantly thinking about your symptoms and pain, because that's what pain is. Like I said, it's that sort of like message to your brain that is going on. The other thing, actually, I will say too, just I know I've used this with myself personally and with lots of clients, I think, is the idea of like the vocabulary that we use. So sort of this concept of transformational vocabulary. It was developed by Tony Robbins back in 1991, but there's a lot of merit to it. So the idea is that even just like the words that we use and the phrases that we use can really help to maybe sort of downplay like the actual sensations that we're feeling. So even when you're talking about your symptoms or IBS, like I'm not saying to like, you know, downplay it or say that they're not important, but maybe if you're talking about it, rather than saying something like, oh, my gut hurts and I feel like a horrible amount of pain today, sort of reframing those like negative terms into maybe something that's a little bit less intense can actually just kind of help calm your body down a little bit and send a message to your brain that it's okay. So maybe you're saying like, my gut feels a little funny, something feels a little bit off track, but I'm going to get better. So just saying things that kind of help to lower the intensity of it can be helpful. I've dealt even with like injuries from running and stuff too, and being able to like run through them and work through them and still deal with a level of pain. I found that just how I think about it and just constantly telling yourself like it's going to be okay, I'm feeling better, I'm going to figure this out, even just that way that we talk to ourselves and the vocabulary that we use can be helpful in terms of our pain response too. I know you had some data, I think you said you were sort of diving into like the mindset thought of it as well. Any follow-up thoughts to that?
I personally, when I initially did the NERVA program, and somebody asked what it was, but we've answered it in the chat. So
Yeah.
this is gut-directed hypnotherapy, just so everyone knows. This is clinically proven to help people with IBS. And there are studies that say that gut-directed hypnotherapy is actually as effective as the low FODMAP diet. So
Mm-hmm.
quite effective and worth a look. So NERVA is a program that is app-based. They have Monash doctors on their board. The 6 weeks, you do like a 15-minute guided meditation a day. And the 6 weeks that I did it initially was the first time that I felt, and of course, there's no way to quantify this, but I felt my hypersensitivity come down. I
Mm-hmm.
felt myself, my system calm. And I think that it was a combination of the program, which is very well designed, and the fact that you're doing it every day, and that consistency made a difference in my system. Our community loves it. We have hundreds of people in the community who have reached out to say how much of a difference it made for them. And then once you go through it, you can just use it as maintenance. So, for instance, if I know I'm going to have a really stressful day, and stress, remember, can be positive. So, for instance, the day my son got married, I knew it was going to be an intense day. I was going to be eating lots of food. I did Nerva that morning, first thing when I got up. So I use it like that. Everyone here, if you haven't looked into it yet, we highly recommend it. And Robin linked some articles for you in the chat.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Nerva is great, and it sort of gets to that root of the symptoms, just helping sort of reduce that pain response and sensitivity
Yes. And
nerves too.
Robin's also putting up links. We have a whole series on yoga. We have a whole series
Awesome.
on breath work. We actually have a video of abdominal massage, which is very popular. So you can search for all those things on the site.
Amazing. Yeah, cool. So it's just another thought to get people thinking, but I'll switch this one just in the aspect of time. So the other idea is just helping to reduce that pain sensation. So going back to the role of the microbiome. So definitely supporting that gut-brain connection through those other methods I mentioned, but also thinking about how we're supporting those good bacteria in our gut that keep us healthy and help regulate the messages that our gut sends to our brain is really important too. So obviously, as a dietitian, I love to talk about the role of diet. So when we think about supporting that, we want to think about having an anti-inflammatory diet. So we know an anti-inflammatory diet can help with many conditions, but it can help with IBS too and helping with symptoms. So what this means is sort of prioritizing whole, minimally unprocessed foods in our diet, foods that have more of those like microbiota accessible carbohydrates, carbs that are good bacteria can feed on and thrive on. Even the types of fats that we have in our diet, so having a higher ratio of polyunsaturated fats, which we get from things like nuts and seeds, even avocado. Those can all be within low FODMAP quantities if you're following low FODMAP elimination. Extra virgin olive oil, fatty fish, and even eggs as well. Lots of different colorful vegetables and foods with antioxidants. So like I said, just focusing on as much diversity as possible, even if you're doing the FODMAP elimination. Living fermented foods. So we know that fermentation, it's an ancient practice of ways of preserving foods, but we also get lots of really amazing different types of microbes that we then take in when we have fermented foods. So I think, Dede, do you have an article on fermented foods specifically in FODMAP Everyday?
We have a lot of information on various fermented foods. It's not just one article. There's several. And I just want
Yeah.
to mention here, so this is very basic, but of course, there's a lot of different people on this call. If you are just starting the diet, or if you're into the diet and you're at this place where you still think that fruits and vegetables are off limits, and we see people saying that a lot. Um, we want to point out that that is not the whole story. What happens is we know a lot of you get lists from doctors that say high FODMAP, and on that list are things like broccoli. And so you get in your head, I'm not supposed to eat broccoli. But the fact is that there are low FODMAP servings of many fruits and vegetables. You absolutely can eat the rainbow and expand your diet as Leah's recommending, even during the elimination phase.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's such a good point. And my heart breaks every time I hear someone say that
Yes,
they have a low FODMAP diet sheet and that's all they were
yes. And
given.
they think they can't eat fruits and vegetables. Exactly. We're here to tell you you can.
Yes. So exactly. Lots of options and head to FODMAP every day. And I know that you do have actually articles on even making your own sourdough, which is a fermented food, kimchi, even
Kimchi.
sauerkraut. So yeah,
Mhm.
all those can be good, even just how you're making it and the ingredients. And then there's portion sizes on Monash and FODMAP friendly that are suitable too.
Yes.
Fiber is really key. I think a lot of people with IBS tend to fear fiber, but we know that like fiber in our diet helps feed those good bacteria and helps prevent the bad ones from taking over. And in turn, they keep our intestinal area healthy. So there's ways that you can get more fiber if you have IBS. We want to take it low and slow, make sure you're drinking lots of water, and even focusing more on soluble fiber we find is more tolerable in IBS, but really making sure you're hitting your fiber targets. And then, like I said, microbiota accessible carbohydrates. We've even seen, just going off a little bit on a tangent, but just over the years, and even just in terms of industrialization of food and in sort of the North American diet, we're losing a lot of these microbiota accessible carbs because we tend to eat more, processed or ultra processed foods in the diet. But as much as you can, including those whole minimally processed foods, things like whole fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes. Those will give you sort of the carbohydrates that your microbiome needs to thrive, and in turn, they're going to keep you healthier and potentially help reduce that visceral hypersensitivity. I just like to bring this up as well. So just a chart just showing what can happen when you have higher amounts of MACs in the diet or microbiota accessible carbs, and then lower amounts, we know it leads to a loss of diversity, mucus degrading bacteria, and even just anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial molecules are decreased too. So really important. Getting into probiotics, everyone always loves to ask about what probiotic can I take, or what pill can I take to help with this?
The magic pill, right?
The easier answer, yeah. So the thing with visceral hypersensitivity, a lot of the studies, like there's some probiotic products online that I've looked at with a lot of like convincing marketing, but the research behind them is much less convincing. So a lot of the studies right now are done on animals, which we can take something from that, but we still, want to have good quality data on humans too. So these are a few that that may, we'd like to see more research on, but that may help. So one is Lactobacillus plantarum, PS 128. That was shown to reduce visceral hypersensitivity, but only in rats. So we're not sure if that can apply to humans, but probiotics, there's often like low risk. So if it's something that maybe you've tried the other stuff and you do want to experiment with, you can, and always with advice of your medical practitioner. L-Gasser IP 141, that one may help with preventing this intestinal permeability and reducing colonic hypersensitivity. And then, oh yeah, David.
Oh, somebody's not muted.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking.
It's okay. Keep going.
And then the other one is Combiotic. So I like to look at the probiotic chart that shows actual probiotic products that have research behind them. You can look it up, probioticchart.ca. And Combiotic was on there, and that one's thought to help with like the gut brain, and specifically with mood and affect. So that one may be just tolerating more around anxiety, mood, stress symptoms. But that one does have better quality research behind it. And then there may be some supplements or some like plant extracts that could help as well. We always want to think about supplements as like being a little cherry on top. So definitely gut brain support from lifestyle, and then diet, always going to be the foundation. But maybe if you really nail down those things, maybe trying a supplement, or if that helps you to be a bit more consistent. So this was a little bit hard to see. I know it's small, but it was from a review. It was translated from Polish, so some of the spelling is a little bit off, but it was a good review. So there's some support for resveratrol, which is like a potent antioxidant. It's getting some attention in like different conditions, but it helped just make cool some of that inflammation. Curcumin as well, which is the active component in turmeric. There's some thought that that can also help with the inflammatory component of visceral hypersensitivity. Vitamin D. So that one's one I recommend a lot. Just I work with a lot of Canadians. We don't get enough sun in the winter months, so a lot of people tend to fall deficient in vitamin D, so it's a good one to look at. Even caraway, and then peppermint. So peppermint actually does have a lot of good quality research behind it. So if you've ever taken peppermint capsules, the idea there is it's enteric coated, so the peppermint or the active component menthol makes its way to your intestinal tract, and menthol can help like sort of relax the walls of the bowel, and it's considered an antispasmodic, so it helps like reduce contraction, so it can help with reducing pain. So peppermint oil capsules specifically can be really helpful.
Can we just talk about timing for a moment though?
Because
if someone is in their elimination phase, or they're in the challenge phase, they have not determined yet what their FODMAP triggers are. And yet throughout this whole time, they might be dealing with visceral hypersensitivity. But you just mentioned probiotics and a bunch of other things, supplements that could be taken But typically, it's suggested that probiotics and supplements not be added
Yeah.
during the elimination phase and the challenge phase because they can alter your digestion. And you're spending a lot of time and energy during those phases trying to figure out your individual tolerance to FODMAPs. And these supplements could cloud that. So when you're all the things that you just said in the last
Mhm.
5 minutes, are we saying these would be appropriate to try post challenge phase?
Uh, yeah, I would say even before or post challenge phase would be the best. Yeah, I'm most cautious with probiotics. I actually don't tend to recommend them that often in IBS. I think with the other ones like peppermint oil capsules, those are more just like as needed. So you could trial those like at some point in the elimination phase, but always just being mindful of when you're going to start the challenge phase. Turmeric as well. Like there's, you know, I think all that to say, if you're going to try a supplement and you're curious about it and you're also doing low FODMAP, that's the importance of working with someone, a dietitian who can help you decide when would be the next time and making sure that you're progressing through those phases appropriately. Because sometimes it can be helpful to layer things on, but like you said, we also don't want to add too many things at once because then it can cloud the results too. So to sum that up, most likely not during the challenge or the elimination phase, but if you're curious about some of these things, talk to your dietitian about it. And then, yeah, the next area would be just thinking about actually supporting our nerve health. So the idea of visceral sensitivity is that we're having increased sensation of those nerves in our gut. So how do we support our nerve health? It's really important as well. So one key way is actually blood sugar balance. Our nerves need glucose, aka sugar or carbs, to function properly. So actually low blood sugar, maybe skipping meals during the day or thinking that extended fasting is good for you, that can actually impair your nerve function and make them more sensitive to pain. So this is why I always talk about just making sure you're eating regularly throughout the day. It's also really important to help reduce anxiety and mood fluctuations, and making sure you're supporting healthy blood sugar levels goes a far way to support your new nerve function and may reduce that sensitivity. And then also your brain, part of your nervous system, it needs oxygen to function. So how do we make sure our body is getting enough oxygen? There's a few key nutrients that play a role, so specifically iron, B12, and copper. I know I see these deficiencies a lot in IBS patients. They're easy to test for, and they're easy to fix, but they actually play a role in oxygen metabolism, and lower amounts of these may even contribute to sort of our nerves not working as they should as well.
So I have a question for you. So if
Yeah.
someone goes to their GP, I mean, we're in the United States, right? So a lot
Yes.
of people go to their general practitioner, they say, my gut hurts, I don't know what's going on. And maybe the doctor says, asks a few questions and then says, I think you have IBS, here's that sheet, go do the low FODMAP diet. Now,
Yeah.
if someone is lucky enough and smart enough to contact a registered dietitian, would you be the one that contacts the doctor and says, hey, could you order these blood tests? Because I don't think most GPs here in the US would automatically screen for those things that you just mentioned. And the fact that some things could be learned by a simple blood test is kind of I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. I think it just goes back to the Western medicine approach. Maybe we're always kind of using a downstream approach where we're trying to just like control the symptoms and not really look at the cause. So yeah, I think from a preventative aspect, actually looking at people's nutrition and blood markers and all that would be good to screen for before we just give someone a pill or tell them to go on a very restrictive
Awesome.
diet.
So
So
that is something that you would do as a registered dietitian. You would reach back out to the GP and you'd say, can we run these blood tests?
yeah, good question. So in
Okay.
in the States, I believe most dietitians do have the ability to write blood work requisitions. In Canada,
Okay.
we don't, unfortunately. So what I tend to do is just write a list, and I can write a doctor's letter and get my clients to check, ask their doctor for those tests. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
And then the third area would be reducing the triggers that cause pain. So this is where I said like the low FODMAP diet would come in. We're reducing, during the elimination phase, reducing the amount of FODMAPs, those indigestible carbs or sugars that cause that stretching and distension to help reduce the sensation of pain. Even reducing pressure on the abdomen, like a lot of people find just wearing looser clothing can help rather than really tight pants or jeans. And then there are other common like non-FODMAP irritants that can cause excess stretching and gas. So for some people, carbonated drinks really bother them, like sparkling water or fizzy drinks. Large, heavy, fatty meals, so really meals that have quite a lot of fatty components or high fat content. And then for people with IBS, large amounts of insoluble fiber. So this is a type of fiber that like increases transit time. It's found in like a lot of like roughage, but even like our brand foods, and then some fiber fortified foods. So just like I said, maybe working on the balance of soluble, insoluble, or for people with IBS, focusing a bit more on soluble might be better tolerated too. Yeah. Okay, I think that sort of brings us to the end of the content.
We do have a bunch of questions. I'll start
Awesome.
at the top. Now, some of them may not really relate to visceral hypersensitivity, and so I'll leave it to you to decide whether that is the case or not. So the very first question had to do with gastrocolic reflex, and this person is saying it's gone from a 4 to 8 hours where almost
Mm-hmm.
immediately after eating, or even less than 20 minutes after eating,
Mm-hmm.
um, they're they're having a huge digestive issue, and they want to know if there's any help for this. Now, I don't know if that relates to visceral hypersensitivity or not, or if it's really just a gastrocolic reflex situation that they should deal with their dietitian.
Yeah, I would say there's that connection of the gut sending messages to the brain. The idea with the gastrocolic reflex is that it's a normal reflex that when your stomach fills with volume or with food, that it sends a message to your colon that it's time to empty out and make more room. That's why sometimes people didn't have like a bowel movement after breakfast, they eat and then they have an urge to go. But with IBS, we see that there may be a really like heightened gastrocolic response that like you get like a lot of urgency or like really need to go to the bathroom right away or have loose stool after meals. So that's sort of like a heightened response in IBS. I didn't look quite into that too far, but I think just the idea that there's sort of like an altered response to the brain of that, I think it would be connected. So I would assume that a lot of the same strategies for visceral hypersensitivity would work for that as well.
Excellent. We have a question from Claire about whether visceral hypersensitivity has been connected to post-COVID infection.
Post-COVID infection, visceral hypersensitivity. I'm not sure. I know that with post-COVID, some people have developed like post-infectious IBS just because of the role of like COVID, the virus on the gut microbiome, and I would assume there's probably visceral hypersensitivity that would develop out of that. But I'm not too sure just off the top of my head about post-COVID syndrome and visceral hypersensitivity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a relationship between IBS and ADHD?
Uh, Those are big questions.
It
Big
is a big
questions.
question.
uh, is there really?
This person
Yeah.
says they've had IBS-C their entire life. They're now starting to understand that their nervous system, it's nervous system related, and likely
Mm-hmm.
they might have even been born with vagus nerve damage and a dysregulated nervous system. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess the relationship there, I have people in my family who have ADD or ADHD. I mean, there could just be that hyper focus on it, perhaps. And I think that,
Mm-hmm.
Nerva, those kinds of, or yoga or breathing or
Mm-hmm.
the gut directed hypnotherapy could possibly be helpful, I would think.
Yeah, I think so too. With ADHD, like we don't know the exact cause, thought to be different reasons for it developing, but the gut microbiome and the health of your gut is thought to be a link with ADHD and other psychological conditions too. So they may be just connected in that sense.
We have a comment from a fellow dietitian that she has added meditation, gut directed hypnotherapy, massage, craniosacral therapy. Someone else has mentioned that now walking after every meal and eating smaller meals has been really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
We have a few people who have said they are using Nerva, um, the Iberogast, the enteric coated peppermint
Mm-hmm.
is something that people have looked into. Let's see. Someone asked about pelvic floor physical therapy.
Yeah, pelvic floor physio. Um, Definitely helpful just in the context of IBS. Like the idea is that a pelvic floor physio can help you look at how your pelvic floor is functioning and if there is any tightness that can be contributing to even urgency or improper bowel emptying. Um, then that could just help things to work better and help reduce like the pressure on your intestinal wall. I didn't see anything about it being like directly connected to helping with visceral hypersensitivity, but I think if that helps address maybe some of the contributors of your IBS symptoms, I would say it would be helpful overall. I always recommend yeah, if people can and they suspect that there's something going on with the pelvic floor, it's always good to see a pelvic floor physio for IBS or reach out to one.
We have someone mention that they have GERD and also a hiatal hernia, and that some of the supplements that you mentioned also can trigger heartburn and acid reflux, and they're wondering how to manage that. And just before you mention that, this is from Teresa. I just want her to know and all of you to know that it's about 36% of people who have IBS do have concurrent digestive medical issues. So you're certainly not alone. And this is, again, one of the reasons why we always support you working with a registered dietitian, because it's each one of us is like, we're like this ball of yarn, right? We've got all this stuff going on, and to unravel it takes a professional, a medical professional like a registered dietitian, so they can look at all the things that you're dealing with. So if you have GERD and IBS, they're going to be able to make recommendations about what you should or shouldn't do. I don't know if you have something to add to that, Lee, about, if you, I mean, if supplements trigger heartburn, then, and you
Oh
have
yeah.
GERD, don't take them.
Well, a lot of people think, yeah, with the peppermint capsules, that's going to trigger their GERD. But the idea is the ones that are effective are enteric coated, which means they bypass the stomach and they make it to
Right.
your intestine. So it's really the like peppermint being in your stomach that's then going to irritate the esophageal sphincter, which is connected with your GERD. So I've had a lot of people with GERD take peppermint capsules and not have an issue. Obviously, with yourself, maybe you test them out and see. But the idea with how they work is that they actually shouldn't trigger GERD. I'm not sure what other supplements would trigger GERD off the top of my head, but yeah.
Someone says they have a B12 deficiency and they're now getting shots. Could that strengthen gut resilience?
Uh, Yeah, maybe directly or indirectly. I mean, yeah, B12, it's a common deficiency as well, but it also plays a role just in like mood and brain function. So I think even just with helping reduce, your sensitivity to stress and helping with mood, that in turn could help your IBS symptoms too. So definitely good one to look
We
for.
have a dietitian who has asked if you have any concrete recommendations for how many grams of fiber can be progressed. Like, how can you up it within a particular time frame to promote tolerance for patients?
Yeah,
This is from a fellow dietitian. She's just wondering if you have any sources that you could point her to that might help her figure that out. How do you
yeah.
up the fiber?
I don't know if there's like one specific resource, but I usually tend to do about 5 grams a week, and making sure people are drinking enough water so that the fiber moves through. Yeah, I found some people can go a little bit more, but on the safe side, I would say about 5 grams a week, depending on where they start.
Okay, we have a question. Someone just wanted to know the proper way to even conduct the diet. This is all on our website. Go to fodmapeveryday.com. We have a step-by-step, if you put step by step in the search bar, this big green graphic will come up. That article has everything in it. You could also just put in the words elimination. You could put in challenge. You could put in reintroduction, and all of those articles will come up for you. Someone else mentions that they're having a difficult time finding a Monash certified dietitian in their area. So here's one of the one, possibly the only great thing that COVID gave us, was that a lot of dietitians started expanding their practice to online, to remote. So we're always telling people use our registered dietitian directory. It's really a matter of finding the dietitian that works with you, and they could be on the other side of the world. We have people working internationally all the time because they're willing to work with people online. So don't think you have to stick with people right in your backyard. Now this person says, does diverticulitis come into play with visceral hypersensitivity?
Yeah, so there is, we do see like in other conditions as well, including diverticulitis, that there may be visceral hypersensitivity and just an increased sensation of pain. With diverticulosis, I always stumble on that word. There is like an aspect of inflammation, and we know that there's probably some microbiome imbalance as well, and that then can lead to sort of that altered immune response and visceral hypersensitivity. So it is linked with that condition as well.
Someone mentioned here that they've had IBS since they're teen years. They found it helpful. They take Creon for a pancreatic enzyme deficiency, but nothing seems to help all the time.
Mm.
You know, one thing that I'm always talking about in our groups is, we all get very focused with what's happening right now, right? Like we have a pain, it's hurting right now. I ate asparagus. Now I'm in pain. Asparagus must be bad. Like we make these connections and then we tend to hold on to them. And we are always reminding people that their GI tract is not static. Their FODMAP tolerances and intolerances are not static. The FODMAP content of food is not static. So the blueberries you ate last week and the blueberries you eat next month are not going to be the same. So, while a moving target can feel really frustrating, I try to look at the positive, which is that there's hope. Just because you didn't tolerate something at your last challenge doesn't mean that's the way it's always going to be. So I think that if you feel stuck in whatever way that it is that you feel stuck, that you feel like things are not working for you, dietitians are really good at looking at what you've done, where you are, and helping you understand what you can do 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, 9 months down the line. You can challenge the same foods again. Maybe a certain medication might work at that point, not now. I mean, could you, talk a little more about that? Just
Uh,
that we're evolving, right? Our digestive system is
yeah,
constantly
exactly. And I
changing.
think too, oftentimes with IBS, sometimes when we've been living with it for a long time, then um, we may be hyper focused on every bowel movement or every little stitch, but it's also normal to have some fluctuations. Not every day is going to be a perfect poop, or, sometimes occasionally you may eat a little bit more fat at dinner and, get some symptoms from that. So it's good to remember too, I think that our digestion fluctuate and we're not aiming for perfection and it being 100% perfect. And I think just the idea with it is we want to try to live our life as much as possible and try to maintain our quality of life, because even just going out into the world, having social interactions, engaging with hobbies, that just makes us a healthier person overall. And I think even just trying not to let your IBS hold you back from that can help too. So
The last two questions are timing. We're like right on time here. Someone wanted to know what the type of fiber is best. We have an article written by one of our other Canadian dietitians, who I think is Jess here. Jessica Rucroft might be here. We have an article on IBS subtypes. And this is another thing we're always talking about. The right type of fiber for you and the right amount of fiber for you is going to largely depend on what type of IBS you have. So if you don't know your subtype, we need to know that first, right? Because the wrong kind of fiber for you could make things worse. So, Kate, she has constipation. So IBS-C, we look in our subtype article, we have very specific recommendations that address that. Someone else wanted to know about hormones and their teenage years. We have several articles on how hormones affect IBS. There's absolutely a connection, which really quickly we'll just mention. We find that people want to blame food a lot and they forget about the non-food triggers. So hormone, stress, um, lack of sleep. I mean, all these things can affect your digestion as much as the broccoli that you ate last night. Let's see. We only have a couple more minutes, and all of a sudden, people are
That's a lot of questions.
throwing more questions in. Let's see. Someone was fine during pregnancy and nursing. Okay, let's see. Oh, interesting. They wanted to know about hormone therapy. Interesting with stomach stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it all comes back to like what is contributing to your IBS symptoms. And like you said, for not everyone, it's food. It can also be hormonal fluctuations, like we see in perimenopause, menopause transition. Fluctuating levels of estrogen and progesterone can also contribute to changes in motility and gut secretions and peristalsis and on all those things. So it can definitely be connected.
Someone wants to know if if we are aware of an active IBS support group that they love having these conversations. Boy, do I have an answer for you. So hopefully you're on Facebook. Come to Low FODMAP Diet Support, where I am the admin and moderator. And if you're really into cooking, come to Low FODMAP for foodies as well. And we will see you there. We have very active chit chats over there. And the last question, this will be it, guys. I started elimination before working with a dietitian. Big mistake, by the way. That's what they said. They were failing every challenge. The dietitian put them on multiple supplements after they tested positive for dysbiosis. So, do you agree or disagree with that approach? If they still have to sort of go through elimination and challenge.
Do you agree with their recommendation to delay the challenge phase until I finish the 4 month cycle of the supplements? She
Mm,
thinks I'll be able to tolerate more the challenge foods. Uh, yeah, that one is hard for me to answer without knowing all your backstory.
right.
Yeah, I mean, like we say, you don't want to be on the elimination phase for too long, generally between 2 to 6 weeks. So that one is hard for me to comment on. For all, I always like to
One
get
more.
full information.
Of course,
Yeah,
of course. And menopause, Carrie, we do have articles, definitely some articles for you on the site that address hormonal changes as we go through life. So we're right at 12:29. Wow, we did well with the timing.
awesome.
All of you will give us a little bit of time to edit this and get it out, but all of you will have a recording. You can always reach out to Lee or to me through the website at FODMAPeveryday.com. I mentioned the Facebook groups. We have Low FODMAP Diet Support and we have Low FODMAP for Foodies, where we are very active and we answer questions like this all the time. So thank you so much all for coming. Thank you for signing up. Look for more webinars coming up. We have some in the pipeline. Yay. And have a great afternoon, everybody. And if you're watching this recorded, thank you so much for signing up. And we'll see you all in our various communities. Thank you so much.